Well, I think it's been tough. I mean, global markets have seen liquidity dry up, and I think Bitcoin is, as you kind of correctly point out, is not, necessarily a value asset. So as growth stocks and tech and FANG kind of come under pressure, it's going to hurt Bitcoin.
Because at best, it's not a currency yet; it's a commodity.
Yes, I think it's probably best to view it as a commodity and really an opportunity for like an emerging asset class.
Right. And so the question is, what is going to be the inflection point on this? And by the way, all the people that are getting burned on it now, right, are they ever coming back? I mean, that's part of the this whole thing, more than just about anything else, is based on psychology. It's based on the masses. It's based on a herd mentality, one way or the other. There's no other way to think about it.
Yes, I mean, there's really sort of two players in crypto, right? There's people who are using it and have wallets, and that, that sort of on-chain wallets haven't collapsed as much as the speculator side, which is people getting burned, and absolutely. So, we need to have sort of both sort of interacting with each other.
Okay. But take on this thesis. I look at all these tech companies, and their stocks are coming down.
Yeah.
I look and say to myself, the people who are most inclined to buy Bitcoin and other crypto are people in the tech industry, Silicon Valley folks, who I think have either gone out on margin or I don't know what they've been doing, but now they're looking at their own net worth falling. You also have like the chip makers falling, and you can say that that's a chicken and egg situation. NVIDIA is a good example of whether those chips were being used to make Bitcoin. Then you have, by the way, the fight over Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash and this split. That's a whole separate thing. I don't want to confuse the audience. But if you have a whole world of people who are going to start to hurt, meaning a tech industry and their employees who were the investors in this, how does this rebound anytime soon?
I think that's a great point. I think that the downturn in FANG is hurting those who are owning Bitcoin, might need to raise cash. But, the next wave of adoption is institutional.
Right.
They're not necessarily getting hurt here. So there is a crossover happening. This is just an awkward transition.
When does that happen, the institutional component?
I think you will get it partly through infrastructure like BACT, which is launching soon. But part of it's going to come from, regulatory clarity, and I think part of that's underway now. I think once we have that, I think institutions will feel a lot more comfortable making bets.
So you've gone from 25,000, you now have a new call at 15,000 by the end of the year.
And that's
tick-tock.
Well, there's a few things that could happen that could drive that. So but this past few days has definitely been, a negative development because we're talking about breaking to the downside of momentum. What
do you think the true downside is?
Well,
and has it already fallen below where you would have thought that could be?
Does this surprise you, shock you?
Well, I think that technicals, especially in a bear market, mean that price levels can retrace beyond like what you think are fair value. But Bitcoin break-even mining is 7,000. So
we're way below fair value. But by the way, Bitcoin mining a year ago, you could have actually done it at this price. And that's the interesting part about this. Right?
Yeah, it's getting more expensive to maintain the security, which is really what should support the price ultimately, right? Because the price, if it's a commodity, then it's going to trade at break-even cost, which is around 7,000.
I mean, Tom, what I don't get is you've been right on a lot of market calls.
Are you saying why the? What was I thinking? Why didn't I just stick with the stock market?
Well, some days like this, it does make me wonder. But
what was the upside? I mean, you had a great call on the stock market. Who knows what this thing is? I mean, this is like who has any idea? I mean,
but again, I think that digital assets are going to be relevant in a world where growth is increasingly digital. So to me, Bitcoin is a real bet on a project where we have 50 million wallets, there's 5 billion Visa cards, and so I think the runway is really adoption in the future by millennials.
We always talk about Bitcoin because that is the biggest of the cryptos out there. Are there any other cryptos that are working while Bitcoin is not?
Well, I think one of the reasons...
Is there a safer haven than Bitcoin?
Yeah. Andrew, I think you kind of mentioned briefly that part of the sell-off in Bitcoin has been this contentious hard fork in Bitcoin Cash. One of the ways you see it is some of these larger alts have held up great, like XRP, relative to Bitcoin is actually starting to break out.
So are they calling an alt is an alt to Bitcoin?
Like an alternative to Bitcoin, yes. And XRP is a token that is really used for settlements, cross-border settlements, but it's held up great.
Do you have any expectation that regulators are going to approve more uses of crypto in a way that currently are not anytime soon? Because that, to me, would be the tipping point.
I think that The first step in that is going to be regulators sanctioning non-compliant exchanges or investigations, and I think that's taking place, sort of price transparency, and then it becomes clear which are the compliant ways to trade crypto, and I think that paves the way for institutions. So I think the steps are
But is it ever
underway.
possible that crypto actually works and works well, but it works at a price point of $500 a coin or $1,000 a Bitcoin, meaning that it doesn't have to live in this other place for it to actually be used? Or have the cost gone up so much that it has to be?
Yeah, I mean, I think in some ways Bitcoin's problem is the unit price. People focus on it, even though you can divide Bitcoin into 8 digits, right? So you don't have to buy a whole Bitcoin. But, it's $100 billion. It's clearing more on-chain transactions relative to PayPal by a factor of 3. So today, Bitcoin is more used to move money than PayPal. And I think it's already establishing itself as a fairly
What's the market
legitimate.
value of PayPal right now? I should go get a market cap on that. You have any idea?
It's probably in the 20, 30 billion.
So Bitcoin,
Right.
so the question is, Bitcoin at 100 billion.
Yes, but Bitcoin is growing its share. So it's in a couple years it could actually be 6 times the amount of PayPal.
Got it. By the way, PayPal Holdings market cap $94 billion.
Yeah.
So if it's 3 times as the size, you think it should be 300 billion.
That's right. Bitcoin's about 1.3 trillion. PayPal's 600 billion-ish.
Okay. Tom Lee of Fundstrat, we got about a month. You're going to come back. We'll see if we get to 15,000 in that time.
Yes.
What's your conviction? What's your conviction rate?
It's not high right now, but do I think Bitcoin as a long-term fundamental story is broken? I don't think so. I mean, price at the moment isn't confirming fundamentals.
When you sit around your Thanksgiving table with whomever you're going to sit with, and there's a conversation about Bitcoin, because I remember last year there was a conversation at a lot of Thanksgiving tables. And you remember, by the way, that's one of the reasons people thought the price went up after Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
Do you think you're going to be telling people to go buy?
I think it's going to be a generational argument, right? I think there's going to be a lot of young people who kind of see the case, and then I think a lot of people are going to be wagging their finger.
Right. The problem is the young people don't have the money. Anyway, thanks, Tom.
Thanks.
Appreciate it.